Emmanuel Macron has been elected again as the president in France, while the people and the farmers have dumped manure in the city streets. In America, meanwhile, Biden has put into place or formed a ministry of truth. So we are actually living in 1984. In other words, the world is being run by clowns, and we are the balloon animals. So welcome in to a few of our friends to the show, Eric, the caveman, and Frankie, if I can get him in here, as well as a newcomer, Guillaume from France, who is going to be our French expert for the day and who's going to tell us a little bit about why on earth the French people again elected Macron, which really surprised me. I didn't expect it. I don't know if the options were very good, honestly, either of them. But again, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about a bit of the politics, where things are going, and then hopefully we'll also get into the traditional Catholic situation in France a little bit with Guillaume, who obviously understands it a little bit better. And of course, I'm sure we'll talk a bit about the sad passing of Bishop Daniel Dolan earlier this week. May he rest in peace. And Guillaume, we're going to start with you. Please, can you please tell me, maybe introduce yourself real briefly, and then tell me what on earth happened in France this last week?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So, first of all, I just want to apologize to your audience for my bad skills in English, but I hope it will do it. So, my name is Guillaume Van Eyzel. I am the founder of the Fide Post, which is a traditional Catholic media in France. So, regarding the current state of affairs in French politics, so indeed, so as you said, uh, you know, it's not really a surprise that Emmanuel Macron was re-elected for a second mandate. But indeed, considering the amount, the amount of scandals, the amount of absolute utter disaster that was his presidency for 5 years, it could be indeed it could be really surprising that the French people did elect elected him once again. But you had to consider that the options, the challenger who were competing against Emmanuel Macron, well, were not, the best options that we could hope for, especially from my Catholic standpoint, of course, but even for the majority of the population. Um, there are many things to say about that. So, first of all, the main right-wing challengers to Emmanuel Macron were Éric Zemmour and Marine Le Pen. So, um, what we witnessed in France for the 5 last years, we witnessed basically a complete wreckage of our economy, of our even of our how do you say that in English, the domestic security, with a surge in crimes, a surge of illegal immigration, and even if with legal immigration, in fact, which leads to, of course, more crime and rapes and many things that you also hear about in Germany, I am certain. So in every aspect, you could actually expect that in such a situation, normally the nationalist party or the nationalist movement uh, would have the best opportunity to seize power, to win the election. But it was not the case. First of all, because we had a split. We had two nationalist candidates actually. So Marine Le Pen, well, she is the leader. She is the current leader of the what are the remains of the former National Front. And the current National Front is really not what it used to be. So I am now 35 years old. When I was in college, in university, I took part in the nationalist movement, but things were very different back then. The party was really more influenced by natural law, even by Catholic faith. But now things are very different. So basically, Marine Le Pen, the nationalist movement right now in France is really much influenced by very liberal ideas. Um, you have many gay peoples in the party right now, especially around Marine Le Pen. So she didn't have the best doctrinal stance to really compete against Emmanuel Macron. Um, and you can say the same thing for Eric Zemmour. Eric Zemmour was more the more of a surprise because even I if you asked me maybe 4 weeks earlier, I would have said to you that I were way more confident about the chances of either Marine Le Pen or Eric Zemmour for this election. But as the time went by, I realized that well, we had the Ukraine war. It was obviously a huge blow for the nationalist movement because Marine Le Pen were quite close to the Russians. Eric Zemmour in the past advocated for Vladimir Putin, so it was really not a good look. It was pretty much bad optics for him. So the media, of course, pressed had made a bad image of him. Well, so what can I say that the the situation would have normally gave us the conditions for a complete victory against Emmanuel Macron. You have to remember that Emmanuel Macron presidency, the 5 last year, we experienced the yellow vest, the gilets jaunes, donc the huge. It was really huge. I took part of it as well. It was basically the people uprising against the regime for very good reason because of the living costs, because of the overall economical situation. But the problem with that movement was really clear for me from very early on, is that it had no leader, it had no doctrinal direction, so it fell apart pretty quickly. But the fact is, the fact is that the regime repressed, reacted really brutally against this movement. We had a lot of people who lost their eyes, who lost their hands, they ended really badly because of the brutality of the reaction of the regime. You had obviously the the COVID policies, just as in Germany. So this as well added to the general miscontent of the population.
Well, and the yellow vest, that's been happening for years now, right? This is like, it seems like every year there's a huge uprising of the French people. It seems to be really effective and extreme, and that's why I'm so surprised. It's like, I thought the French were like these totally like, like, okay, they're going to go against the establishment, and definitely I thought there was no chance it was going to be Macron. Seriously, I thought zero chance, and I heard he was elected again. It's like, what on earth is going on in our world? Totally shocked me.
We have a very specific political configuration in France, and our main problem really is the left-wing parties, especially the main current left party is called La France Insoumise. I don't know how to translate in English, but anyway, this is basically like it is not like the Democratic Party. It's more like the Bernie Sanders, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez line. Really the wokes, the the critical race theory types of guys. So these guys basically infiltrated the Yellow Vest movement at some point, because the Yellow Vest movement had no leader, had no, and especially the one of the big errors of Marine Le Pen's is that she didn't supported this movement at the very beginning. So the movement was basically infiltrated by these leftist elements. Even though the uprising had really good reasons, but uh, our problem right now, and we witnessed it in the elections the last week, is that we have this huge. We have basically three main tendencies in the French population. You have what I call the regime population. It's a kind of population, it's the type of people that will always vote or choose the candidate of which is chosen, even implicitly chosen by the elite, by the regime, by the medias. And today it is Emmanuel Macron. So we have a lot of people, especially especially the elderly people. They are really afraid, by many things, and they want to keep their social benefits. They benefited much from the uh, last, uh, last decades, so they basically will vote for the regime candidate. You have another part of the population. This is the leftist population, and in this population, you have a huge vote coming from the what we call the suburbs, the suburbs population from they are in the neighborhoods around big cities such as Paris and Marseille and Lyons. Many of these peoples are from foreign origin. Many of them are from really recent immigration, but they obtained the French citizenships somehow. And these people are really easily manipulated by the regime, by the mainstream medias. So when you have the last part of the French population, which is mainly right wing, mainly patriotic and nationalistic, especially in the east part of France, where I come from. In my village, Marine Le Pen, in the first round of the election, made something like 50% of the of the village voted for her, and it's been like that in my neighborhood. It's been like that since I was a child, because the population of the real country, the working class, the middle class in France, mainly votes right wing and had nationalistic tendencies. But it seems to be insufficient to beat the regime electorate, the people that will vote for Emmanuel Macron or Nicolas Sarkozy or people like that. And it is insufficient to beat, and it seems to be really, and this is really, concerning this rise of the leftist vote. It's not only an immigrant vote, but it's also an immigrant vote.
I saw somewhere a stat that he got most of his votes, or a huge percentage of people 60 and over in age. Was that true? I saw
Absolutely.
somewhere that he mostly won. If it weren't for the older vote, he wouldn't have. I don't think it would have even been that close, which
Yes,
is
correct.
pretty interesting. Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely.
So does that
Um,
mean is there hope then for France? I mean, I'd actually like to send it to Frankie real quick, because I think it's a really interesting comparison if you start to look at the different the different politics of Germany and England and France and the U.S. That's kind of what I got these four together, because I think it's got to be quite different. And Frankie, I mean, listening to Guillaume, is this similar issues in England or no?
I think in England, the political landscape is entirely different, in fairness. For the past 12 years now, we've had the Conservative Party in government, and they've been more or less the dominant quote unquote right wing force in Britain. Unfortunately, it's been under this same Conservative government that homosexual marriage has been legalized, people have been able to change their genders, mass immigration has gone unchecked. Nothing substantially different from if the Labour Party, the dominant left wing force, were in power. Um, and so really there's nothing like the Front National in France back over here in the UK. A few years ago we had Brexit and we had a party known as UKIP, which was far more right wing, even socially, than the Conservative Party. However, they were essentially a one issue party. They just wanted to get us out of the European Union, and that was that. It was done, and they kind of faded into obscurity. So the issue is, despite the Conservative Party being extraordinarily liberal, and despite them being incredibly corrupt, that there's been scandal upon scandal whereby one member of parliament was caught watching improper material in parliament. They had parties during lockdowns. Despite all of these different things, there's not really any alternative, because the only alternative is the Labour Party, which is even further left, which is like Bernie Sanders, that kind of left wing. So unfortunately, humanly speaking, the situation in England is, I would say, probably worse than that of France, in as much as there isn't even an appetite for any change like there is in France.
And that sounds like Germany. Germany in Germany, even, I mean, again, a lot of people unhappy with Merkel, and we don't like her, and so we want to change, and so the change went even farther left. They voted in like the Green Party in the social, kind of socialist, I guess, but kind of the Socialist Party, and it's just like, really, you look at all the issues that were happening under Merkel, and they chose, the people who they thought would fix the problem would be your Greens and your Socialists. It's just like, duh. And it's just because, unfortunately, in Germany, people are they're fat, they're happy, and they feel like everything's okay. Nothing's good, nothing needs to change, and so status quo is good. And if we need to change a little bit, let's go away as far as we can from the Nazi Party, because that's all that matters in Germany. As long as you're not part of them in any way or right wing at all, you're fine. Eric, what do you think? I mean, obviously, America. It's not like America has anything to brag about right now either.
No, well, it's really interesting to hear the different countries, and they always tend to sticking with the same thing. America, for all its problems, like, we're anything but, right? We're sort of more bipolar, up and down, up and down. Current projections are a big red wave, this November for us, which, I suppose is a good thing. But no, I don't have much knowledge of the four of us. I think I'm the only one who lives in America. So I don't follow too closely the European political systems,
No,
but it's
but I
really
think
interesting. It's really interesting to hear how it's different, and I'd say that's my biggest takeaway so far, is like having those voters who want the stability
Yeah.
is just very foreign to me.
Well, I mean, here in the UK, this coming Thursday, we have local elections, which are essentially, the councils for towns, cities, regions, things like that.
The
Not
important
all of
ones.
them, but roughly a third, I think. And this is really where we're going to see the effect of the different scandals that the Conservative Party had on the electorate, and whether they move away from them to other political parties. But then again, I don't think anything substantial will change. The only place where I think any substantial difference will be made is in Northern Ireland, where for the first time ever, it's looking like a nationalist party will be the biggest party in the Northern Irish Assembly, which hasn't ever happened in history. But then again, that nationalist party, although historically was very Catholic, nowadays the Unionist Party, which is full of Protestants, is now more in accordance with natural law, because the Nationalist Party is okay with abortion and homosexual marriage and things like that. So really, humanly speaking, not looking good for Catholics.
Absolutely.
And Guillaume, do you feel? I mean, now that you got Macron for another is it 5 years? I mean, is that so? It's 5 years. Oh, that's even worse. Yikes! We have it bad enough for 4 years. I mean, is there something that you think this election will wake up more of that the people who are kind of happy with it, maybe they need to go even more? I mean, the title of the show is, are France and the Western world determined to burn? And I mean, I know that sounds pessimistic and it sounds a bit hyperbolic, but I think it's a fair question. I mean, it's like, the people, you see the mess that that these politicians create, and the people just elect the same exact mess. And so it's like, are they determined to watch it burn? I mean, what do you think in France? Is there any hope here?
Sure, and I guess it's really, we are really fortunate to be Catholics. It's a tremendous grace, because we have this virtue of hope, and in the overall population, obviously. Most of the French people now are apostates. They don't believe in the faith currently, as you know, and this is the same thing in many places in the Western world. But I see. I tend to approach things like that. What Frankie said just earlier really resonates to me. That for the last 10 or 15 years, we had so-called conservative or right-wing parties that actually went more and more liberal. They were pandering more and more to liberalism or to liberal policies, especially in regards to the natural law. What Frankie said earlier was really amusing to me, because before Macron, we had a socialist government, and before that socialist government, we had Nicolas Sarkozy, and Nicolas Sarkozy was marketed as a right-wing candidate, right-wing president. But in fact, this guy opened the doors for mass immigration. He started to introduce the laws that would ultimately lead to the legalization of the same-sex marriage. I don't know if that is the correct term, but well. So basically, we have a real problem at the right wing of the political spectrum, and this is actually still the case today in France. And excuse me, in my opinion, this is the reason why the Nationalist Party in France keeps losing, especially since Marine Le Pen or Eric Zemmour are now the de facto leaders of that political spectrum, because these guys, either Eric Zemmour or Marine Le Pen, if you ask them, okay, they have really good ideas about immigration. They obviously want to reduce immigration, which is obviously a really good thing and a really urgent matter. They have good ideas on the economical matters as well, really good propositions. Marine Le Pen has a more social leaning, which is very good, because I am very concerned about the situation of the working class. This is something really important to me. But if you look their declaration, their doctrines, first of all, they are not Catholics. They actually despise Catholicism. Eric Zemmour said publicly that he is against Jesus Christ. He said many things like that. He said he don't want to convert to Catholicism because he considers it as a minor religion, which is basically bankrupt. This guy was broadcasted and presented like a savior of Christianity and so on. But the matter of fact is, this guy is an Algerian Jew originally. So this is really upsetting to me. Marine Le Pen, the same thing. She is a feminist. She is pro-abortion. She is pro same-sex wedding. So these guys don't have, the correct doctrines. They don't have the. I would even say that they don't have the necessary graces to really, to save France, actually. So,
yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good point, and it ties in with a question that a friend of mine, Calder, asked in the comments section, saying, "Do you think there is a political solution to our problems?" I mean, right now there's not even one being offered to us, right? Because I mean, I remember reading about the French election, and it was saying how Marine Le Pen is championing herself as a single mother and things like that. I mean, you can't even conceive of things like that, as a solution. Even if some individual policies are good ones, especially the urgent ones, such as controlling immigration and things like that. But there simply isn't one on offer. I don't think if there was one on offer, I don't think people would choose it either, because I don't think the peoples of Europe, unfortunately, because they have forsaken the faith, they aren't open to the grace of God, and they're not open to a restoration of authority in the church and in their own countries, not one bit.
Sure.
Right, and that's important to say. I mean, now we're 30 minutes through the podcast. Is that I think we all agree with that there it's definitely a danger of trying to trust into a worldly solution and a political solution. And I think we all completely agree it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's never going to happen. We have to trust in God and in supernatural solutions. I think that's absolutely important for.
But that also doesn't mean hide your head in the sand and not vote.
Exactly, and I think these are conversations that people have around the table, right? That's the point of the podcast. I understand it's a Catholic family podcast. People are thinking, why are you talking politics? We want to have good conversations that people are having, and with Catholics that you can trust. That's the point. So that we hope that we have good perspectives. Does it necessarily matter? I don't know, but it's worth talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I just want to add to what you are saying is that, of course, it's really important. Politics, are really important. Actually, Pius XII had really good things to say about the duty of Catholics to act in the political field. Of course, in the as far as they can, but I guess we have, as you said, many people, of course, right now in France, in England, in the US, most of the people don't really care about at least the Catholic faith. Some people do tend to understand that natural law is really important. They understand the implications of legalizing LGBT policies and stuff like that, because they see that in the influence of that with the kids right now in the schools. So they understand that right now. But in France, we do have a little Catholic party which is called Civitas. It's run by traditional Catholics, but it's still really small. But I have some hope that providing that we manage to expel these fake conservative in the current right-wing movement, providing that we accomplish that, but maybe this will allow us to fill the void and to maybe reach the population more broadly.
And do you think, purely your opinion, do you think it's worth voting for the lesser of two evils, or do you think you should only vote for a candidate who holds at least the most important positions? And I know this is a debated topic, but I would be curious for first, Guillaume, your opinion, and I'll ask each of you.
Well, yes, this is a really tricky question, because I decided I would not vote for anyone in this election for obvious reason. But I really had huge difficulties to take a decision about that, because when you look at the potential disasters that Emmanuel Macron will bring upon France, undoubtedly, well, maybe it would be reasonable to vote for Marine Le Pen, but I still didn't vote. But I can't really, take a decision about that.
Sure. Frankie, what's your, again, purely personal opinion? I don't expect anyone to be a moral guide here, but just what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, purely personal opinion. I think for me, because obviously, when it comes to my decision at the ballot box, I mean, it really depends on the particular election and what's been going on in the past year or so. So, I mean, for example, last year, we had elections for the mayor of where I was living, which is a big metropolitan area of more than 1 million people. So an influential position. And the Conservative candidate was a sodomite and hadn't really done anything. But then the alternative was, as I say, the Labour Party. And in that case, I spoiled the ballot. I felt like I should go and spoil the ballot to like show discontent. What I'll do this Thursday, I'm not particularly sure, but I think, of course, as Gaelic Patriot said in the comments, there is a duty where possible to vote for those who at least adhere to natural law. And to also, sometimes I feel like it's prudent to prevent socialists and communists getting into power if that's what you can do. Obviously, that's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, so to speak, but this is just what I think I would probably do. And also, there's a question directed to me in the comments saying that if a Catholic leader is elected, which of course isn't likely, should we remove democracy to preserve that Catholic ideology? And that would be very nice, but you just have to weigh it up with prudence and how the people would react to that. But yeah.
Right. Eric, what do you think? And again, personal opinion.
Yeah, so I mean, from a practical perspective, if you only voted for someone who had 100% the right ideals, you'd never vote for anyone ever. But I would go back to Pope Pius XII while we were talking. I found his quote that I recalled, but this is from Pope Pius XII in 1946. "The exercise of the right to vote is an act of grave responsibility." He said it should be thoroughly understood that abstention, I'm an American, I don't know. Abstention should be thoroughly understood a grave and fatal sin of omission. So obviously, if your choices are, a homosexual and a socialist, probably find someone down ballot. But yes, I do think lesser of two evils, as long as it's not a front line, like their main issue is bad.
Yeah.
And is that something then? I mean, again, I'll go around the horn because I think this is kind of the next question is, should we, as young, semi-intelligent men, try to be more involved, at least in local politics? And Guillaume, I'll ask you that. I mean, I guess we're kind of all somewhat involved, at least in journalism or trying to spread truth, and I think that's also extremely important. But I think politically, it's also a good question. And what do you think, Guillaume?
Well, obviously, considering the institutional state of affairs in France, it's quite difficult to act in politics as a Catholic, as a traditional Catholic. Maybe at the local level, maybe it's possible, especially to. And this is actually the strategy that the Catholic Party in France, Civitas, laid out. The main strategy is to focus on all these tiny towns, small villages that most of the time they don't even have one candidate to run the city town. So maybe it's easier for us to start from there. But at some point, I guess the cultural struggle, the struggle through medias, through what you are doing, Kevin, with YouTube channels, with websites and stuff. It's also, and I see that in France. Actually, I forgot to mention that, but I founded the Fide Post 6 years ago, but within the 2 last years, I really witnessed a real uptick in terms of numbers of young Catholics coming to the faith, not necessarily to the real understanding of the state of affairs and the sede vacante, but at least coming to the faith with good faith, leaning to traditional Catholicism. And I guess this is a tendency that we will, at least in France, that we will witness for the next 10 years, because I see things like that. You have a need. People need, they need authority. They need structure. They need values. They need the faith. More simply. So, I guess we have some chance to, but we have to to prepare for that. And this is actually a huge task, because it requires a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of graces.
Yeah, it's absolutely true, and I think really knowing and being ready to stand behind what we believe in, right? I mean, what do we believe in? I think that's really it's so important. First of all, to go back to our catechism, right? What are our basic apologetics? What are our beliefs? What must we stand behind, and what must we not back down from? And that may be coming to our front door, right? At least in Europe. Who knows? I mean, we may have to, and some of us already have had to make decisions that were, at least according to each of us, for our conscience. And I think that's the first step, as you say. I mean, it is a lot of work, and that's where we got to begin, is try to understand what is right and what is wrong, I suppose, and then move on. I think you're absolutely right, and I think it is important. And I think, as you have seen, I have also seen, there is a movement towards truth in traditionalism. Now, yeah, as you said, it's not necessarily all the way, but hey, you got to start somewhere, and that's why it's so important to have these types of shows, and anything that we can do to talk to our neighbors, young people especially. Hey, look, guys, we've got it. We've got what you want, and we got to try to get it to them. So, Frankie, I'd ask you then what you think about participating in at least local politics.
Yeah, I think it can be beneficial depending on where you are, as I say. So the way the United Kingdom works is similar to Canada, where the country is divided up into around 650 constituencies, and whoever wins that election becomes the member of parliament for that area. So it's quite difficult for a third party, another party, to gain access into the Houses of Parliament. Back in 2015, the party I mentioned before, UKIP, got around 12.5% of the vote and maybe 3 seats out of 650. So if there were to be a political movement, it would have to be heavily focused in one area to get any kind of national attention or success. Personally, I think, at least in the United Kingdom, the best way for traditional Catholics to gain influence is by being respected and influential in their own particular industry, by doing well in life, having good children, having a good job, things like that, being very presentable and respectful. I think that says a lot. And I think that's a good way to build influence for traditional Catholics in the system, as it were. I think that, as I say, at least in the United Kingdom, the likelihood of political success is quite low. But at the same time, as you mentioned, Kevin, there are lots of people, especially young people, coming towards the traditional Catholic faith. And it's my hope that these same people, as they grow older and have families or become priests, religious, and so on, create a better country for Catholics to live in, in terms of their influence, whether it's through Catholic companies, things like that. So yeah, to summarize, I would say I think the best way for Catholics to gain influence in at least the United Kingdom is not through political success, because I don't think it's very possible, but more in terms of economic and cultural success and influence.
Fair enough. Before I send it to Eric, I saw a question to me, I think, about if I think this is all caused by Freemasons or Jews. Honestly, I don't think it matters. I mean, I know it's fun to talk about, and it's a great conspiracy theory, and I've dived down so many rabbit holes that I've gotten lost, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I mean, in the end, someone at the top is bad and evil and corrupt and immoral, and if it's whoever, I mean, it can be Mickey Mouse. I mean, honestly, which it might be. Go check out one of my latest videos. But anyway, it doesn't matter, and that would be my answer. That you can go down that rabbit hole and you can say whoever it is, but in the end, it's not ruled by moral people, and I think that's in the end what matters. Eric, what do you think about political action?
Yeah, much like Frankie said, right? Live the best life you can according to your faith. Raise your children the right way. You're not going to get a lot of people wanting to follow you and convert if you go move into the middle of nowhere and become an isolationist weirdo, which is tempting at times. Don't get me wrong. So yeah, and going back to the prayer and sacrifice every day, pray your rosary, make a special intention for your country or even for the world political situation as a whole, and that's going to do far more than any actual action in the political realm.
Yeah,
fair enough. It's kind of funny. I've never had so many people in the chat, so it's kind of like I think it's funny. Like while we're talking, some of us are kind of smiling off. I was like, I think I was smiling while
Yeah,
Guillaume
I
was
wasn't
mentioning something
laughing
about
at you,
apostate,
Frankie.
and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not what I was smiling at. I was smiling at a comment. Okay, so just in case anyone's wondering, I did not find that funny. Okay, the comment section, you guys have been awesome. I think we have a lot of Frankie fans over here, and also Guillaume. I think you bring quite a crowd. It's a great comment section, guys. I really appreciate it. And if you do have any questions for any, I don't have answers, but any of these other guys, they might have something good to say. And I guess, I mean, what else can we say? I mean, the future of Europe, I suppose, is, as we say, it's bleak, but it's also hopeful, because we've all said now that there are people finding the truth, and so I think that it's not lost, and I think that that's a really important thing to remember. It's like I see so much on social media about the end of the world and everything's bad. Everything is bad. It's all miserable. It's like that's just not how we should live, and it's
Yeah.
not how Catholics and Christians should act. And we should be hopeful and optimistic, especially publicly. Don't forget, social media is public, y'all. So don't forget that being so negative, it puts that on you, but also on your position and your faith. At least in that's my view of it. And Guillaume, I mean, how do you? I mean, do you think that optimism, or what's the way to act? Right? I don't know how to formulate the question, but I'll just send it to you.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I get it. So, what Eric and Frankie said earlier is really it's absolutely what I think. Actually, it starts with the faith. It starts with the family. The family is the nucleus of society. I guess it's Pius XI that said something to that effect. It starts with the faith, then with the family, making good families, creating networks, creating vocations, creating chapels, obviously. And it's Frankie said something about the importance of the economics of the especially creating businesses, creating careers, educating our youth, our children to to make good careers in their fields according to their capacities, of course. But I guess it really starts at this level before reaching a more important political status, because obviously right now and the world, the people of the world think like that. They think in terms of power, of appearances, and of money, really. So since as soon as you have the appearance of power or some kind of influence in the medias or with money even, and I put it really bluntly here, but people really think like that. I mean, outside the Catholic communities. So this is really what we are trying to do here in France. In Brittany, they have a really huge amount of chapels. They have schools. They have many families, a huge networks of families of young entrepreneurs, young businessmen. This is really amazing. It's really a model for many Catholics around the world. So we try to emulate that anywhere in France, and I guess, yeah, it's really where we should start. And once we reach, God willing, once we reach a sufficient critical mass, I don't know how to say it, but maybe that now from this point on, we can effectively maybe reach some kind of political power.
And do you think that that's, you say there's a big movement or group of French Catholics, and that's awesome to hear. That's something I don't know anything about, and I was telling Eric before the show that's like part of why I don't know any of it, because I don't think much of it is in English, right? So I can follow stuff in England and Australia and Canada and the US, obviously, because, well, it's all in English. But in France, I see things. I see things from you, on Twitter especially, and I'm kind of like, well, it looks good, but I have no idea what it means. You know? And it's something though, but it's something that for me, and I'm in Germany, and so and finally I can understand German, so that helps a little bit. But I think that it would be great because we got 3 of us now in Europe. I mean, I think we need to try to even do better at uniting these Catholics, because I know, especially like Frankie in England, there aren't that many in Great Britain, unfortunately, and they're pretty spread apart, and they don't have enough sacraments. I mean, that's for sure. But I think if we can build that, even meeting once a year or every other year, or I don't know, something that I think it helps you to live your faith and to be joyful in your faith and understand, hey, I'm not alone. You know, I have a network. I mean, I see Frankie's got a fan club over here, so I'm not worried about Frankie feeling alone, but still, you know, I think it would be great if we could get together. And there's another video on this channel about a pilgrimage and a music fest in August. And I think that's something I would love to do, stuff like that. Or do a pilgrimage let's do it this year in Germany, and let's do it next year in France, and then the next year in England. I mean, because we got so many places you can go. And I think, boy, if you start getting that type of momentum with hundreds of Catholics walking down the street with banners and crucifixes, and I mean, that's where it's at. And I mean, for the public as well, I think that's how we turn hearts. And Frankie, I don't know if you got something to say about that, or if you want to answer one of these many questions that people are asking.
Yeah, well, I mean, just on the state of, the state of things in general, in the UK and elsewhere, it's improving very quickly. It always is. I think that I've always said to people, I think that the same divine miracle that allowed for the propagation of the church, when it started with 12 people, the 11 apostles after Judas, killed himself, and Our Lady, started from 12 people, and now, at least nominally speaking, there's more than 1 billion Catholics around the world. Obviously, as I say, that's nominally speaking. Point being, around the world, I see many young people from irreligious or a-religious families that are coming not only to the Catholicism, not even to what's popularly known as Catholicism, but to traditionalism, and even to our position where we don't recognize Francis as a true pope. It's growing everywhere. It is very difficult, especially in places like the United Kingdom, where the Society of St. Pius X and its recognize and resist position, kind of has a strong hold on what people think, because you have the convenience of it all. So it is very encouraging when you see other people agree with you, and hold the sedevacantist position in some form or another. It's very encouraging, and I think that's an important thing, especially for young families, so that they don't feel alone. But I would say that overall I am optimistic, because every day is a good day, because every day there are more and more people that are taking a little step towards the traditional faith. I mean, just last year or the year before, 2 diocesan priests joined the Institute of the Mother of Good Counsel in Italy and were conditionally ordained. Some little things like that doesn't make the news here in English-speaking countries, but there's positive signs all around. We have a few previous Novus Ordo priests in Most Holy Trinity Seminary as well. We had Father Michael Oswald a while ago. Vocations are growing, seminaries are expanding, convents are growing, new things are being built constantly. And I think that the traditional faith is kind of growing at a breakneck speed. And even though in the day-to-day we don't often realize it, so it can, you can kind of lose hope in the day-to-day. If you take a step back and look at the picture, the greater picture, it's an amazing one. And I think there's a lot to be optimistic about.
I think that's a great point. And when you see what I think Bishop Sanborn has had 4 priests recently ordained, Bishop Dolan will have 4, and I know in May in Omaha they'll have 6 subdeacons at the same time. I just heard that today. So as you say, it really is. I mean, compared to 50 years ago, of course it's not huge, but I mean, compared to what that's been the last 10, I mean, it's
to the past
astronomical.
10 years. 8 sedevacantist priests in 1 year and 6 subdeacons. Phew. Insane.
Mm-hmm. Can you even imagine that 20 years ago?
Oh, yeah, unbelievable.
No, it's
for those of us who are old enough to remember 20 years ago.
Yeah. Frankie's like, but someone asked about doing a sedevacantist congress or meeting and talking about. I mean, I think it's a great idea. The concept is fantastic. I personally, and I preach this in every podcast I have practically, is unity. Now, there are issues that the priests and the bishops have to deal with that are beyond us. That's for them to figure out. It's not for us. But I do think that people need to unify. They need to listen to their priests. They need to listen to their bishops. Follow what they tell you. They know a lot more than I do, obviously. But I do think that the people need to unify and realize these priests, these different groups that have disagreements, they're all trying to lead souls to heaven. They're all traditional. They're all valid. They're all licit. This is something that we need to realize and try to get along and to show charity and to try to be a team. I know it sounds cliche, but if we work in this together, if we march down the street to Our Lady of All Touching together as a group with all different sorts of beliefs, you know what I mean, to a certain point, as Sede Vacantis, obviously, I think that is it could bring so much good. It's just I can't even fathom it.
I think that's probably. Go ahead, Frankie.
Oh, sorry about that. I was saying in a recent newsletter of Bishop Sanborn's, he said it's true. All of us, even those who hold considerably erroneous beliefs, like those in Society of St. Pius X, all of us are united by our rejection of the reforms of the Council, and especially we who are in agreement with a lot more principles, namely the absence of authority in Francis. We are united by a lot more than by what divides us. I don't mean to downplay whatsoever, as anyone would know, the importance of those differences. However, the vast similarities that we have, namely a shared Catholic faith, a beloved Catholic faith, means that a great deal of cooperation on the streets is possible. Like relations between families, helping people get a job here and there, prayer rallies, anything like that. All of these things are not only possible, but very, very much recommended between Catholics, and they're a great thing that can be done.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, one of the unfortunate side effects of being in the Great Apostasy is, and I guess it's a good and a bad thing, but the attention to those little details, right? We kind of have to be our own theologians to a certain extent to actually come to the truth. But on the other hand, that also means that we refuse to even get along with someone who has an opinion difference, right? And there's always been opinion differences in the church, right? I forget which pope it was, but had to shut down the Benedictines and the Jesuits from calling each other heretics, things like that. That's always been a thing, but just without the authority, we get stuck on, and not to minimize any point to the faith, but we get stuck on these things. The thesis is a good example where, yes, it's important, but it's also not, it doesn't make the other side heretics, right? And we don't have a pope to be able to tell us that. And so, that's kind of one of the awkwardness about the situation we're in now.
There was an article, I think also by Bishop Sanborn years ago, and this is true, and it was said in the article, this is true of Bishop Williamson and the Resistance, of the Society of St. Pius X, even the Indult, and between ourselves. All of us, I think, when we hear the thundering voice of a successor of St. Peter, a true Catholic, holy successor of St. Peter, we would all listen to it in an instant. And I think all of us would be incredibly glad to see the rolling back of the heretical reforms of the Council. And the absence of authority in the church, obviously, is a terrible thing that has caused not even the heated discussions, to say the least, between ourselves, but also, as we know, the great devastation of the faith worldwide. It does have terrible effects. So it is an important thing, I think. I think it's an important thing not to shy away from discussions like these, and discussions about these important issues, because it's always important to have correct and true principles before we start a course of action. But it's encouraging to know that along the way, in the meantime, because we're not always all going to agree on everything, that there is a true unity of faith and a desire to see order restored in the church.
Yeah, no, and that's absolutely true. And I think that, we see it too. You have to remember that time is short, and you just don't know. Bishop Dolan's a good example of that. That I think that's such a great example. As you said, we should have these discussions, but let's make sure as people we don't have ever any animosity, and especially publicly. And but privately too. And in our hearts, people who disagreed with Bishop Dolan, especially on social media, which is ridiculous because it's social media. And it's like, and people arguing with a bishop on Twitter is just like, makes me want to hit my head all the time. But anyway, you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when you're going to die. You don't know when someone else is going to die. So what is your feelings toward them, and what's your interaction with them? I think that's really important to remember, that everything we do, we are Catholics. We're supposed to be the light of the world all the time. Doesn't matter if it's in person, doesn't matter if it's an email, if it's in Twitter, if it's in a group messenger. That's so important to remember. I think it's easy to forget when you're behind a keyboard and you think, I don't like what he said. that's I don't care if he's a bishop, and I've seen it, and it's truly tragic. And I hope that people now see the good bishop passed away suddenly and unexpectedly, and there are probably people who, the last thing they said to him was, I don't agree with that. And that's ridiculous, and it just shouldn't be the case. And I hope that his passing brings more unity and charity to people, and to realize that you don't know the time or the hour, and for someone like a giant of the faith like him to just be gone, relish every moment and make sure that we live it as Catholics. I think, and on Twitter too, please, everyone. I know some of you people in these comment sections. I know some of you are these Twitter folks, so behave, okay?
Yeah.
Someone else. Oh, go ahead, Frankie. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it is very easy to get lost in these things, especially when behind a keyboard. It's very easy to be drawn into wasting one's time, being too silly or being too rude to people and things like that. But when someone else is perceived to be in error, and obviously we all perceive different things in that case, there's no secret about that. But when you do perceive someone to be in error, you're never going to make them think like you by being rude to them or being uncharitable towards them or by making jokes about them. The only way people are ever going to agree with you is if you are nice and friendly and charitable to them. That doesn't mean, to minimize anything about what you believe or anything like that. But common human courtesy actually goes quite a long way, and it's easy to forget that, certainly.
And I think it's a great idea too, again, for why we should meet in person, or at least these Skype meetings. I know that that's not as good of an idea, but I think it's a cool idea, because when you see someone's face and you meet them in person, especially, they're humanized. I mean, I see on Twitter all the time. I'm sure we disagree sometimes. I don't think we've ever argued, but just hypothetically, it's easier to be kind of nasty when you don't know the person. So that's why I think we need to get together. We need to plan these meetings, especially with us in Europe. I mean, it's not that big, guys. We can meet together once a year or something. I think we really got to do this stuff. I think the three of us here, we're movers and shakers, fellas, and we gotta make this happen. I'm gonna get a group chat with just the three of us, and we're gonna make things go.
Indeed, but I don't live. Alsace is not so far away from Bayern, so
Right.
I will try. Indeed, I will try to come to your event in August, because it's maybe like 2 hours by car, so it's not really.
That would be more than that. I would say it's more like, or Strasbourg is more like 4.5.
Okay.
But doable. And so someone asked if we are doing a YAG, and it's a good question, and it is actually a plan. I do plan on renting a castle next summer in lieu of doing a music festival. We'll have a 4 or 5 day long pilgrimage, somewhat retreat YAG get together on the Bodensee, on Lake Constance, southern Germany, which is southern central, which is most people, but that is in the. If you have any questions about that, go ahead and email me, kevin89davis@gmail.com. It is not officially booked yet, but it is in the works to happen, and I expect it. But and also, this is important. It's not only for singles, so it would be recommended for singles, but it's also for anybody who wants to come and meet other traditional Catholics and get to know people that are. I don't mind if you're married. If you want to come and literally go on a pilgrimage, why should it only be single people?
Why not?
I mean, and I think that maybe you take a little bit of the pressure off the single people in that case too. Will it work? I don't know, but yes, a castle, Inez. That's the hope. Yeah. But thank you for the question. Yeah. And I'm glad to see a couple other people already saying they're going to come. We're doing a pilgrimage August 11th and 12th here in Bavaria. That is in the works. It's planned. We're going to walk 60 kilometers to the Shrine of Our Lady of Alt-Utting, which is 30 kilometers from Munich. Amazing pilgrimage location that's been extremely effective. We've gone 3 years now straight, and she's answered pretty much all of the prayers that people have had. So it's really, really great. If you have any major things you need to lay at Our Lady's feet, I highly recommend marching the 60 kilometers and getting some bloody feet, because it works better than anything. And I think it's what our world needs. I think pilgrimage is really an undervalued part of our active faith these days. I think you don't really see it, and it's unfortunate.
Prima.
And you look at Saint Gregory the Great. They were doing pilgrimages during the plague and had people in Rome and had people just dying along the way. So imagine that you actually have the plague and you're dying and you're still walking on a pilgrimage. So I don't want to hear any complaints about someone who can't walk 60 kilometers. So, yeah, maybe I don't know if we want to end this talking about maybe a little bit more about France, but I don't know exactly what to ask you again. I don't know how much you know about the French traditional situation. Is there anything interesting to say? Because as far as I know, there aren't any seminaries.
No,
in France.
Unfortunately, no, we don't have that. Well, the current situation is quite similar to the rest of Europe, in the sense that we obviously the SSPX has a huge grasp on the French traditional Catholic movement, because obviously Archbishop Lefebvre was French, so he is a huge figure for us, even for me, I guess, because I'm partly I just telling my story here, but my father is from Alsace and my mother is from West Africa. So I have a huge respect for Archbishop Lefebvre, but nonetheless, I guess the Sedevacantist movement is quite old here as well, because you have really old priests such as Father Barbara, Father Guépin. Father Guépin was one of the first of the nines, who were expelled from the SSPX back then. And of course, we had the curé, the Monsieur le Curé, Father Siegel from here in Alsace. He was ordained, actually, he was ordained under Pius XII, and he actually retained his parish against the local modernist bishop. He was absolutely a real hero of the faith. He died in 2018. So we have quite a lot of Catholics of Sedevacantist position in France, but we don't have much structures. We don't have a lot of chapels. We don't have a lot of we don't have seminaries. So things are difficult, but in Paris, the numbers are increasing tremendously in the last years, especially because we have now several people or medias on YouTube or on Twitter who are spreading the word about Sedevacantism, especially. So we have a lot of real uptick in terms of numbers in the chapel in Paris, which is run by Father Jocelyn Le Gall from the IMBC. And well, so things are really are getting better, but we just need really not much, a bit of more chapels, more material means, in fact. So this is really something that will get better over the time.
I think it's a good point you mentioned about Archbishop Lefebvre, because I think most traditional Catholics have a great admiration for such a great Catholic bishop who, as we all know, also did have his tragic flaws. But I think that the best way you respect someone like that, who, and I personally don't doubt that he is in heaven, the best way to respect someone like that is by not embracing their errors whilst they were here on earth. The same way that when we venerate St. Augustine, we don't venerate any of his sins of his past life. If indeed Archbishop Lefebvre is in heaven, and I probably believe he would be, he wouldn't want us to embrace his errors whilst he was here on earth, which obviously includes recognizing these false popes as the authority of Christ. I think in France it's encouraging that, although there isn't a seminary in France, the IMBC allows, it's a French and Italian speaking seminary, so that there's the possibility, at least for French people, to go and pursue a vocation should they want to. And there's also a lot of French people that have gone to seminary in America, Father Duterte and Father Henry de la Chanonie, who's now in France as well, I think, with Abbé Guépin.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, and we also have from the side of the CMRI, because I am more close to the CMRI, because Father Thomas Legal is working with the CMRI. We also have quite an uptick in terms of dynamics, especially in the eastern part of France, because Father Marchizet, I don't know if you know him, he was ordained by Archbishop Lefebvre, I think. He is also in the eastern part of France, but he is working now with the CMRI. So I am in the hope that the IMBC is running Paris. The CMRI will maybe run the east part of the France, and maybe in Brittany they have more than sufficient priests and chapels there, because they have Father Guépin, Father Grossin, and other priests. They have a lot of Father Roger, of course, in Rennes. They have a huge chapel with I don't know 200 or 300 faithful there. So things are improving, and we just want to finish with that. Is that I try my best to be really charitable and to be fair with non-Sedevacantist Catholics, people coming from the SSPX or from the Indult. When Frankie said something really important about that earlier, I really think this is my personal opinion, but we really have to be open-minded, or to be welcoming, to be listening to these people, because when we are appearing in this when we are able, to appear like that to them, they are more inclined to listen to our arguments and to eventually even embrace these arguments.
Yeah.
And I would say even to make sure to approach new people. I have several converts, and maybe Frankie can speak to this too, that converts, or I should say the cradle sedes, you get comfortable with your own cliques, your own groups that you grew up with. I mean, Eric and I could speak to this. We grew up together and know each other.
We're still in our clique, Kevin.
This 4 years old, and we're still in our clique. But we're talking to at least one convert.
That's true.
But it's so important to remember that if someone new comes in, for goodness sake, go and talk to them. Try to welcome them into these groups, because I think it's so easy to just get comfortable in the group that you have, the guys you've known your whole life or for years, and then these other guys they sit in a corner and they don't feel welcome, and who knows where they're going to go. I mean, maybe they shouldn't. It shouldn't be the reason why they stay, obviously, but the human element matters, and that really matters. We really have to go be ridiculous about it. Go out of your way to talk to someone who is visiting and try to make them feel welcome, because it really might bring them back. It's an interesting story that we had a couple that left the SSPX 2 years ago, partly because of COVID. And they came to our parish almost randomly, because our chapel is really hard to find. It's a little tiny chapel that's kind of inside of an old house. And the first thing that impressed them was the little young altar server who was maybe 13 years old, and they were really impressed by how well he served being so young. And the second thing was, we just happened to have a barbecue that day at the directory, and we invited them, and they stayed, and they've been here ever since. And maybe that's a little bit of God's grace, working for a little bit of good fortune, but it's just a good example of really going out of your way to welcome people, because it matters. And I don't know, Frankie, if again, I think you have England such a strange situation right now. I don't know if that's similar for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to say, of all my close friends that I know that are traditional Catholics or Sedevacantists, didn't grow up that way. In terms of the young people that I know and that I speak to regularly that are Sedevacantists, not one of them grew up in a Catholic family, let alone a Sedevacantist family, right? So I think that's a testament that the traditional movement is growing exponentially. Every single day, there's someone that's more interested. I think that anyone who is a practicing Catholic is quote unquote fair game in terms of bringing them to the traditional faith, showing them what is their birthright. It's not just like you're bothering people and pushing something on them. It's showing them this is what you had, this is what you're entitled to, and this is what you also have to profess. This is what God gave to the world, and this is what Christ shed his blood for, namely to establish the Catholic Church in order that we may go to heaven. And you're not going to find that in the Novus Ordo. And it's out of the greatest love for the salvation of people's souls, the greatest love for other people that we do these things, and we have to do these things and have to bring them to the traditional faith and show what there is to offer, even if it's at the cost of many things socially or otherwise. I think particularly in the United Kingdom, as I said earlier, the Society of St. Pius X has a stronghold in as much as it has a school. It has maybe 14 priests. I can't even conceive of 14 Sedevacantist priests here. It has sisters and things like that. It has all of those material things, but then you have to say, is it pleasing to God that they're here, that they're poisoning the faithful with different errors here and there? And the answer, unfortunately, is no, it's not. I think someone put in the comments that Catholics who still hold the RNR position have to listen to a quote from Scripture, which basically says, "Go out of her, my people, that you not be partakers of her sins." And that's very true. That's the message that speaks to every single Catholic around the world, young or not. But I think it's our duty, obviously, each according to our state in life and each according to our abilities, to show people there's a true religion out there that, as you said, Kevin, this is the truth. It's there for you. It has all the answers. And at the same time, there is a crisis of authority in the church, and here's how you navigate that. I think that's a great thing to do for someone. I think it's a duty insofar as we can.
No, well said. And Guillaume, is that something? What do? You said that you established Fide Post 6 years ago. And is that something that do you work as a journalist, or is it like me? It's just a part-time thing you do in your garage or something?
Yeah, this is more of a personal sidekick or a personal activity. Just before I answer to your question, I just want to say hello to Yassine in the chat. Yassine is a friend. He's a Catholic convert from Algeria, actually. He lives in Algeria, so
oh wow!
As you can see, the graces of God are striking very far away. So
Dominic, one of my good buddies now, who produces content here from India. I mean, all by himself in India, and he's one of the top guys you're going to meet anywhere. Fantastic.
Yeah, sure, indeed. So about your question. So I founded the Fide Post 6 years ago. I come from a very old Catholic family. My family has been Catholic since, I don't know, since Clovis or Charlemagne, but obviously, unfortunately, they followed the Vatican II changes. So I was raised in the Novus Ordo parish from my area, and it was only in my late years in college that I started to really dig into the pre-Vatican II magisterium, and by reading it, because I never read it before that. By reading it, I realized that it was absolutely not in line with the Vatican II magisterium. So I basically realized that, well, okay, these Sedevacantist guys may be in the right. So basically, I became a Sedevacantist. And back in the days, I was still more in the indult. I went to an indult mass here in Strasbourg. And I started my blog as an indult goer myself, but maybe in 2015, something like that, I became formally a Sedevacantist. I started to frequent to go to Father to Tal Drillingen, to Father Siegel's mass, and since then, I started to defend the main Sedevacantist arguments on the Fide Post. But I also read quite a lot of articles of what I call apologetic synthesis to refute especially Islam, because in France we have maybe it's not the case in the US, you have a different story, but in France we have a particular, and this is the same case for Frankie maybe in the UK, especially in Birmingham, in places like that, you have a lot of Muslim.
That's where I'm from.
Okay, okay. I didn't know about that, but yeah, obviously, you know what I'm talking about then.
Yeah, the school I went to was about 20% white, and it was because it was what's called a grammar school. So you take a test to get in, even though it's government funded, and for all of their faults, I do have to credit the South Asian community for their emphasis on education. So there are a lot of Muslims at my secondary school. Ironically, they were actually better to live with, and go to school with than a lot of the native British people, because they were like horrific atheists that didn't live at all in accordance with the natural law. And a lot of the Muslim boys were like naturally good people that like cared about their religion, or a false religion, though it is. So I think that apologetics against Islam is a really important thing, because I think that they could actually make good converts when the time comes.
Indeed, and the reason why I started to do that is because, well, I always was interested by the Middle East and the Muslim world, the Arabic world, more specifically. So when I realized that we had so many Muslims in France, and I also had I knew many people French people of native origin, native French people who converted to Islam because of the influence of Islam, especially in the suburbs. I said to myself, well, this is not acceptable that we don't have a traditional Catholic answer to the Islamic apologetics. So this is one of my favorite topics on the Fide Post. But in the late months, I really tend to not dwell myself with complicated theological matters, because I am just a layman and I don't want to go beyond my abilities. So I really try to more broadcast and defend the political Catholic doctrines of the Church, the social doctrine of the Church, the integralist doctrines, and many people in France are really interested in that. So this is my main activity regarding the Fide Post.
And would you ever host a podcast with say some of the French priests? I mean, I think that could be interesting. I don't know. Again, I don't know anything about French Catholic media, but I mean, I tell my German friends all the time, I'm like, okay, guys, we need more German content, and that my German's not quite good enough to be able to host the show. So I'm trying to get my friends to do it, because I think Americans are just more willing to do this type of stuff. Maybe that's unfair, but I think it's true. Maybe British too. Maybe it's the English speaking countries, but I feel like at least with the Germans, they're just not really up for it, which is a shame, because there are some great German speaking priests. I mean, wow, like amazing. And I'm sure it's the same with the French. And so it's just kind of like, boy, I think, if we need some more people producing, I mean, not podcasts, but some interviews with these priests and asking them about these good topics, because then, I mean, of course they would have so much to say. I don't know if that's something you already do, or you seem like you'd be the perfect person to do it.
I made some interviews with Bishop Pivarinas, with Father Borja.
Ah, my buddy.
Yes, indeed. Yes, we talked about you. He came last. Yeah, no, in good. I reassure you, in good terms. He came in the area with His Excellency last summer. So I interviewed them. I made an interview with Father Borja and with the father who is working with Don Floriano Abramovich in Italy.
Father Weisensteiner.
Absolutely, Weisensteiner. So yeah, but this is the only interviews I made so far. But some of our priests have YouTube channels here in France.
Mm-hmm.
Father Grossin in Brittany has his channels. He broadcasts mainly sermons and homilies. But I agree with you. I would like, it would be my hope that more Sedevacantist priests would themselves present podcasts and take action, or because as laymen we can't go too far. I really don't like to talk too much about theology. I prefer to stick with political theory, commenting the news and stuff like that, because I am not comfortable. I am not a priest. I am not an authority. I don't want to, to go beyond my duties. So.
Yeah, it's easy to get in over your head and start to confuse people when even if with good intentions. I mean, it's easy to do, and doesn't mean necessarily that we can't obviously talk about theology or apologetics, but it is. I'm with you. I'm the same. I tell people, I'm like, I don't want to talk about theology unless I have a priest on the show, just because.
Yes.
It's just that's their ballpark, and I'll stay in mine or try to, where it's cultural or political or philosophical. I got a couple of shows coming up about philosophy, which I hope will be really good. I think that's really a great topic as well. Obviously, but hopefully we can.
We have to understand as well that especially the Sedevacantist priests, especially in France, don't have much time for themselves. They are incredibly. They have a lot of duties, masses and sacraments and confessions and visiting some family. So I understand they don't. They are.
But I tell you what, though, I mean, if you and I've learned this, that if you give them the topic and the time and you set everything up for them and you do the interview, they've been pretty willing to do it. I've been really surprised that at least again most of the priests of the CMRI have been. They just say, okay, they're busy, but they will give an hour in once a month or something to have a conversation, even if it's basic catechism, which I think it's great for people just to get to see different priests. If maybe it's a priest they've never seen, from a different parish, or someone that maybe they don't know, say, they're priests, and I think that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. I think maybe they're even don't have time to set it up, but if someone sets it up with them and gives it to them, then maybe they'd be willing to do it. I'm putting some pressure on you here, Guillaume.
No, I see.
This is what I do.
Okay, I will think about that. This is a really good idea. I agree.
Oh, thank you. That's what I'm here for. All sorts of ideas that other people can do all the work, and I hope to take all the credit. That is all about. Well, guys, and I think that's I don't know if that's a good place to end it, but we're about an hour and a half here, and it's getting to be about 10:30 here in Germany. I think I'll ask maybe last words from everybody. I saw someone over here asking about Twitter handles or ways to contact you guys or follow maybe Fide Post. Maybe I'll start with Guillaume. Maybe you want to say, if you want to, again, where people can follow you or find your work.
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on the fidepost.com. You can find me especially on my YouTube channel, which is eponymous Fidepost, or mainly on Twitter, Fidepost. It's the same.
And Frankie, you're also on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. That's more or less the only kind of social media that I'm regularly available on. That's English Tradcat with a 1 as an I. So I'm always available there.
Nice. Eric, then we'll start with last words for you. If you have anything you want to say about any of the topics we covered today, or if you want to say bye.
No, I'll say, just kind of echoing, I think Frankie was talking about how optimistic I think we should be. The traditional movement really just kind of spiking. I was at a wedding last week, had 7 Sedevacantist priests and 19 sisters attending this wedding, which, is outside of the normal, but it's still like, it was a wedding. It wasn't like an ordination or anything. So I thought that filled me with hope. And then the only other thing I'll say is rest in peace, Bishop Dolan. He was the one who confirmed me. So
me as well. Yep.
Prayers to him.
Absolutely. Frankie, last words?
Yeah, as I've said in the past couple of times that I've been on there, although with the addition of rest in peace to our dear Bishop Dolan, a great line of the faith. I would just, as I always say, keep the faith. Don't be tempted to give in to the modern world or to easy solutions and things like that. And be faithful to your daily rosary.
Perfect. Guillaume, last words?
Yes, I will say the same about Bishop Dolan. I never knew him personally. I heard a lot of his sermons on the SDG, the St. George's the Great website. And I know he was really close. He was quite close to my Catholic friends in Brittany because he visited them quite sometimes. Maybe, and also the Catholics in Quebec, in the French-speaking Canada. So yeah, rest in peace, Bishop Dolan, and I can't say much about it, but he was a great inspiration as well for me because. He had something in his. He was really eloquent in his sermons. Really inspiring. It was really rare.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely true. And yeah, I guess my last words, anyone who enjoyed this show, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We've had plenty of comments, but we've had some pretty crazies in this. I think next time I'm going to have to be a little more strict on the banning button or deleting things. I'm kidding. But or Frankie's fan club, I guess I mean, if they follow you, it means views and comments, so it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's slightly embarrassing for you, which makes it even better, because the Schadenfreude for us is it's Schadenfreude. It's enjoyable sometimes to watch a little bit of squirming, in the seat. but we appreciate it. We appreciate everyone following again. Please like, share, subscribe. We'll try to do we typically try to do live shows every Saturday with different guests. Frankie's been on it several times, Eric as well. I hope Guillaume also will join us again for another show. We produce content every day, sometimes too much content that probably annoys people, but you don't have to watch it. I mean, you should, but you don't have to. Anyway, I appreciate it all. I appreciate all you guys in the comments. It's honestly been like two different shows going on at once, trying to talk a really serious conversation and seeing the craziness over here in the comments, which I guess I don't know if that's good or bad, but I appreciated it anyway. So for the three of you, I appreciate you guys coming on. Seriously, it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think I learned a lot, and I hope to do it again with each of you, or maybe all four of us at the same time. And so until next time, God bless.
God bless
God
you.
bless.